Come for the finance, stay for the magic. I feel like that was a good Andre impression.
The power. Look at me. I'm huge.
I have a ton of energy. I don't know where it came from. Anyways, today we're going to talk about my financial journey, how I started, where I am, where I'm headed. My name is Oscar, and I'm going to tell you about the financial journey that my wife and I have been on for the past, really, for almost 5 years. In order to tell you guys where we are, first we have to go back and tell you where mainly I came from. So my parents were not good with money, or my mother isn't, as far as I'm aware. Maybe she's gotten better over the years, but growing up she wasn't the best. In terms of my father, I don't know much about his financial status, what he does with his money, what he invests in, if he invests at all. I know that he has gone through a bankruptcy. I know that it was really, really hard, and I remember growing up there were quite a few times where we ate grilled cheese for dinner, we had eggs for dinner, or, I remember watching my father wash laundry in our kitchen sink and drying them using a fan. It's not to say that like we struggled super hard or that we were dirt poor, because we weren't, and I never want to pretend like that was the case. We had a decent upbringing. We were middle class, at some points maybe even lower middle class, but we were middle class. We were not dirt poor. We just faced some financial troubling times, just as most people do when they're growing up. And for me, that left a really large impact on who I wanted to become and who I wanted to be in terms of an investor, how I wanted to approach my finances, and the life, recognizing that financially I just did not want to struggle. Which is really funny, because I did the typical thing whenever I graduated high school. I was an athlete, I had an opportunity to go to a school as a preferred walk-on, and that was probably the dumbest financial decision I have made to date in my 28 years of living. Looking back, I should have either gone to a public school and not a private school. I should have stayed in state instead of out of state, or I should have gone into the workforce and started investing as soon as I graduated, either by doing real estate or just working a day job and taking a portion of that money, saving it / investing it. Neither of which I did. So when I left college, I did not graduate, by the way. I could not afford it. Again, a dumb financial decision. But when I left college, I ended up basically bringing about $33,000 worth of debt with me. And at the time, my girlfriend, she had a little different story. She did not grow up super wealthy either, but her parents well, it's funny. Her dad buys things that he believes is going to get the job done the best. And so if that means spending a little extra money, he will. If he doesn't have to, he won't. Her mother is very, very thrifty, and she pulls mainly from her mother's side, but does have some expensive tastes whenever she feels like it. But for the most part, she's really, really thrifty, and having that skill set, and having an insanely strong work ethic, allowed her to go all the way through school, private school out of state, same school that I went to, all the way through school, debt-free, along getting quite a few scholarships and tutoring and just picking up side jobs throughout her journey through college. So after we got married, I had a ton of debt. I had basically no savings, no money, was working random jobs here and there, and I had come across an individual named Dave Ramsey. And if you are part of the financial sector, if you spend any time looking at finances or reading about it or listening to podcasts, you'll hear Dave Ramsey's name at some point. Now, I will say I don't agree with everything that Dave Ramsey says. However, I feel like it is a fantastic foundation, or like foundational course in terms of if you have no financial background, if you're financially illiterate, your parents didn't teach you anything about money, your school, at least my school, definitely didn't teach me anything about money and making money and investing money. Dave Ramsey and Ramsey Solutions is a fantastic way to get introduced to budgeting and learning about finances and personal finances. I had to have this really hard conversation with my wife where I said maybe we should go to FPU, which is Financial Peace University. It was less about her going through it because I knew that she handled money relatively well. It was more for me to go through it. But I knew that if we just got married, that our finances, if this was going to work really, really well, we needed to come together on our finances. It's one of the major contributing factors to divorce, and that was just not an option for me. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old, so I don't remember my parents ever being together. And I love my parents to death, but that was something I did not want to experience. I did not want to put my kids through, and I love my wife very, very much. And for me, I knew if we were going to get on the path of success in terms of our marriage, we needed to make sure that our finances were under control, which meant telling my wife that I believed it would be best for us to go to a financial course. And she took it hard. She was not happy with me. She was very upset, in fact, and explained to me how she had done all this hard work, which was true, to build up her savings, to get through school debt-free, and I, on the other hand, basically did absolutely nothing, and she was 100% correct. And at the time, she wanted to buy a house, and I don't blame her. She had worked really, really hard. She just graduated. She was getting a really good job, and she wanted to buy a house, which is understandable. And at the time, I had been listening to Dave Ramsey quite a bit, and I told her I didn't think that was the best option. And so from there, I called into the show, talked with Mr. Ramsey for a couple of minutes. He actually paid for us to go to FPU, and we started our journey in October of 2017. It was a very eye-opening experience, a very tough experience, and it allowed for a lot of personal reflection for myself, but also allowed me to get an understanding of what my wife actually put herself through in order to be in the position that she was. In January of 2018, we started our financial journey where we started attacking all my debt. We basically took out my wife's entire savings and paid off a large portion of my debt, which left me with about half. She had just started her new job. At the time, I was working between GameStop and a restaurant here in town. And by, I believe, June of 2018, we paid off all $33,000 worth of debt. And we were renting. And when I tell you I cried, I was extremely ecstatic. I was super happy about paying off that debt. What I did not realize at the time was that our financial journey was just beginning. The next decision was whether or not we should continue renting. And the place that we were renting was a loft downtown, and we really, really enjoyed that. And we would have stayed if not for the new management company that came and took over the property. It just was not a good fit. They didn't listen to some of the things that we had been doing in terms of like the agreement that we had with the previous management and owners, and it was a bad situation. And so we were not forced to buy a house, but we just didn't see why we should rent again if we were going to be paying about the same price. Because we got really lucky with this loft where we were only paying about $850 a month, and we would pay 3 months in advance. So I think it was going to be like $950, but because we were paying in advance, we got a little discount. Anywhere else in town was pushing $1,000 to $1,200 a month in rent, and it just didn't make sense in our heads to pay rent at that price when we could own a property. So we started the process of looking for a home, and in November of 2018, I was 24 years old. We bought, was I 24? Yes, I was 24 years old. No, that's a lie, I was 25. I was 25 years old, and we bought our first house, which is this house right here, our current residence, our primary residence, and this room is part of that primary residence, which was crazy to me. We had worked really, really hard. We had planned, we'd taken a lot of time, we'd gotten out of debt, and we finally got to buy our first house. And we were also investing along the way with my wife's 401k. We had a little bit of money saved up. We had, at the time, I think we had about $20,000 in our savings, and we had just started working with a financial advisor and discussing some of the options for investing moving into the future. I knew how important it was to buy properties in order to invest. I had known about that for years, but I just didn't have the money or the credit to be able to do that. I was unaware of creative financing at the time, and just wasn't sure how to operate moving into the real estate world without just having a ton of money available for a down payment. What I quickly found out is for your first home, and as long as you live in there for a year, you can get a much smaller down payment. You'll keep the PMI, obviously, but you can get a much smaller down payment. And that's the option that we took. We took out a conventional loan. We put about $7,000 down on this house. And at the time, the asking price was about $145,000, which meant that we took out a $138,000 loan. The awesome thing about this whole process, one, we had looked at many houses for about 6 months, 8 months, and when we came across this house, the family that was here was in a rush to move. They basically redid the floors, and I believe the husband had gotten a brand new job, so they had to move really, really quickly. And they offered to pay all the closing costs, so none of that came out of our own pockets. So instead of paying close to $10,000, we paid just the down payment of $7,000. Also, within that time, we moved in really, really quickly because we had to move out of our apartment complex, or our loft apartment. Basically, when we found this house, we basically had about a month to 2 months to move out. Can't remember exactly, it's been a few years. But we started that process, and we figured it was probably going to take 2 to 3 months, that we were probably going to be homeless and living with our parents for a little bit. But surprisingly, the process of buying this house went insanely fast, and I'm talking about a month. It was so fast, in fact, that the banks and our realtor were like, I've never seen a transition in title, and deed, and all the paperwork. I've never seen it move this quickly. And we got into this house. We moved in. We lived and slept in our kitchen for maybe a week while we got our bedding and all the stuff moved in and put together, and the floors replaced. But it was a relatively smooth process. And the reason I'm telling you about this property and our primary residence is because we chose this place because we're eventually going to turn it into a rental property. But that $7,000 that we put down, helped us buy $145,000 worth of real estate, worth of home. We've since paid, I believe, between $18,000 and $20,000, maybe a little over $20,000 on the house since then. But with the recent, the past year and the way that the real estate market is going, we've also had quite a bit of appreciation. Within the first 2 years, we appreciated, the house appreciated, we didn't do it. The house appreciated, I believe, about $10,000, which was awesome. I was super happy about it, and it fell within that 3 to 5% range of appreciation. But within the past year, it has jumped another $20,000. So that $7,000 investment that we put into this house, even though it's our primary home, has bought us about $65,000, $170,000 to $175,000 worth of home. And we could sell this, we could pay off the remainder of the loan, and we could walk away with about $50,000 cash in our pocket. Around this time, I realized that I still wasn't using any credit. I didn't want any debt. I just used a debit card. But I started watching more and more on real estate and learning more about leverage and arbitrage and positive arbitrage. And it dawned on me that I had developed the skills that I needed, and my wife had developed the skills that we needed in order to properly use debt and leverage it in a way that would allow us to build our wealth exponentially. And so about 2 years of living in the house, we'd sat around, we'd saved up almost $50,000 that was sitting in our savings account. And even though the money wasn't doing anything, we had this safety net. I realized that we had opportunities to really skyrocket the pace at which we build wealth. And I began speaking with my wife, and I said, you know, maybe it would be more beneficial if we took a portion of that, at the time about $45,000 to $47,000, and we put it into another rental property. She kind of looked at me all crazy and was like, why would we do that? We'd have to take out another mortgage, we'd take out more debt. And I began talking to her about mortgage payments, the price in which we would have the tenant rent out the property, and how much the mortgage payment would be. You know, our tenants pay all the utilities. We have a property manager. And I said we could cash flow. It may not be a whole, it may not be $500 or $1,000, but we could cash flow, you know, $200, maybe $300, and that's small now, but slowly build using that, and eventually get to the point where we have 3, 4, 5, 6 properties that's bringing in, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 per month that could replace my income entirely, and eventually replace her income entirely. And this was a huge mental shift for me because I was so terrified of credit and super terrified of debt because I personally did not handle my finances properly and was not mature enough to handle debt. Now, that's not to say there aren't risks with it, because there definitely are risks. But if you take your time, you're patient, and you're smart about how you utilize your credit and your debt, you can put yourself in a position to be okay. And when we looked at the numbers with her job and at the time my job, I'm currently in real estate school, so I don't have a job currently. But at the time when we purchased our rental property, and we purchased it for $125,000, it's currently renting at $1,150, and our utilities are just under $800 with a property manager, which means we net about $280 a month. When I looked back and started thinking about the debt, I recognized that I was in a different place. I was more mature, and given the jobs that we had, if for whatever reason our rental property, if it went vacant, we were making enough money to cover both this mortgage payment and that mortgage payment. Now with our rental property, I believe we put 25% down, and that came out to be about $33,000, I think, is what we ended up putting down for the down payment. And so we have $33,000 worth of equity there, maybe like 34 at this point, roughly. And in this house, we have about $50,000 worth of equity. And the place that we are now is, how do we go from making an extra $300 a month to an extra $1,000? And our goal is by 35 to be making at least $10,000 per month from any rental properties that we have, so that my wife can stop working. And then from there, scaling that to a point where if I want to work, I can. If I don't want to work, I don't have to. Or if I am working, I'm working on passion projects and things that I love, like Jester, my apparel. The thing that we have been discussing recently is cash out refinances and different creative financing options so that we can buy 1 or 2 properties moving into throughout next year. As I finish real estate school, we're going to be bringing on more money, obviously, as I start to sell real estate. My wife is a PA, and so she works at the hospital and makes good money. And couple those together, and we should be able to buy 3, maybe 4 properties moving throughout next year. I also picked up a secured credit card through Discover, which will be here in a couple of weeks. And my goal is to start building my credit so that I can help with purchasing rental properties moving into the future. Because with this house, my name's not on it. I did not have a credit score at the time because I basically got rid of all my debts and then was just terrified to pick up a credit card again. And so that is the plan for us moving forward. We obviously have money in her 401k through her work. We have some money in a Vanguard Vanguard account here soon. We're going probably for next year going to start looking at purchasing a Roth IRA, opening a Roth IRA. Well, actually, opening one for me because her Vanguard account, no, excuse me, her 401k is a Roth 401k through her work. And then I also invest $10 a week into my Fundrise account. And I also have about $200 currently sitting in my Robinhood account, which I haven't been putting money in there religiously, mainly because of how liquid it is and me being able to jump in and out. And I just don't make enough money currently with the side job that I have to warrant putting any more money into that. So I'm just sticking with Fundrise for the moment. And the plan is to be a millionaire, at least have $1 million worth of assets within the next couple of years. We're currently sitting at about, let's see, between this house and our rental, that's $300,000. We have about $355,000 worth of assets, but our net worth is currently negative due to the mortgages that are on this property and the property that we're renting out, which is something, again, we were okay with when we decided to put money down on our second, or I guess technically our first rental property. I'm really interested in what the next 5 years hold and where we're going to be in the next 10 years. But definitely within the next 7 years, we're going to be financially free. We're going to be doing whatever we want, traveling if that's what we want to do. We have a son on the way, and I'm excited about that because I get to introduce to him financial literacy and teach him about how the world operates and things that you can control can determine the type of life that you live. And so I wanted to share this story with you because I just started posting videos about finances, personal finance, investing, and I want you guys to know where I come from, where I came from, and where I'm headed. And I wasn't just introduced to money. I wasn't given money. In fact, the only thing that's being handed down to me is going to be my mother's house whenever she passes, and that's going to be split between 5 of us. I'm also one of 17 kids, and there's a lot of us, and that's split obviously between my father and myself, or not myself, that's weird, my father and my mother, but there's a lot of us. We were not given money. We didn't have a ton of money. We had enough to do some fun things, and that was awesome. And my mom took out a lot of debt for us to do a lot of things that we were able to do growing up without letting us know, without us realizing that. Had she not done that, we wouldn't have been able to play the sports that we played or go on some of the trips that we went on. And because of that, she sacrificed basically her retirement. And so I'm telling you this because anybody can do it. You can come from any place in life. It doesn't matter how bad it is. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy and that what you're going through isn't hard, because I understand without having experienced what you're going through that you're dealing with difficulties. But if you make more good decisions than you do bad, and you invest and you work really hard, you can get anywhere in life. You can do whatever it is that you want. You can live the life that you want to live. And so this is part of my financial journey. This is where we are. This is where we are headed. And I'm excited to share that with you guys. My name is Oscar. Thank you for watching. You guys have a great day.